we're going to wind up, Michael, with bringing it down to earth. How are we going to apply this to learn how to be mindful or pay attention to the creative cycle? So I'll throw a question to you. Give me an example of something we would run into on a regular basis that isn't scientific, but you believe that we would have to challenge our brains to use the seven, and then make sure that if you can be specific. Is it something that you have experienced? What would you come up with?
You cook, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
How about creating a meal?
Okay, like a restaurant. We're going out to eat?
No. You have some people coming over, some people coming over for dinner.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
So that becomes a creative challenge for you. You have to, and you go through each of these, the individual phases.
You know what I thought we were going to be talking about is that when you go to a restaurant, you're creating a creative cycle to look at what's on the menu, you're inspired. Sure. But what you've done is to up the ante, because they're doing most of the work of the or more work of the creative cycle. So this would be a much richer mental experience, mental exercise. Yeah. So okay, so you've invited some people over. Set the table for us.
Yeah. Well, let's start back. Take a few steps back. The first stage is the initiation stage. So that's, you've got to sort of come up with a goal in the first place. Okay. So the goal, let's, like you say, up the ante. Maybe you're deciding you're inviting somebody who could potentially give you a job, you know. So okay. There's like, you know, you've got to impress this woman and her husband who okay. You know, could lead to some kind of nice work for you. You're friendly with them, but so in the initiation stage, you do start setting a goal. You have a goal, and part of that is the brain has to process, where are we now? What's the current situation? What's the future situation that we want to try to achieve? And essentially, how are we going to get there?
When is the event? How much time do I have? All these factors. Yeah. So you're already into the saturation stage. You're pulling in information.
Yeah, in a sense. These are fluid stages, but you know, for clarity's sake, I would say you're still in the initiation stage. You're setting the goal. Okay. You're tapping into the motivation.
Okay.
You know, why am I going to go through all of this? Is it really important to me? It is very important to me, because you want a job, you want to impress them, you want them to like you, and so on. It also brings in mental imagery, which is an important cognitive function. We all do this. I think we're very visual. I think we all do this. We all create pictures in our brain that either are saying this is the way it exists, or this is the aspiration that I want to get to. In any case, the initiation stage has got to set your goal so that your attention, as another cognitive aspect that's brought into this, is your attentional abilities are focused on a specific goal. It's all focused. You're finding the motivation to actually go and start working.
Throughout the creative cycle.
Yeah, because this is cooking a meal is going to take some planning.
Okay.
I would move, say, then into the saturation stage. This is the stage where you're pulling in information. So you think, all right, what am I going to cook? And you think, ooh, I wonder if these folks have any dietary restrictions. Okay. That would be, you know, terrible if I cooked peanut.
Right. So you gather all this information.
Yeah. So you start gathering information. You might try to call them. You might realize that you have you picked a recipe. Maybe your guest said, oh, I love pad thai food. You think, great. I don't know how to do that. So then it's like, quick, I have to go, and you have to develop those skills. You know?
Okay.
If you're going to pan fry something you've never panned, you've got to learn those skills. So the saturation phase, gathering information and learning the skills that are actually going to enable you to do it. When you get to the manipulation stage, well, and back in the saturation stage, you've also decided what are the ingredients that I need, what are the foods that I got to make. Then you've got it all in front of you. And then it's a process of mixing and matching and playing with the ideas. What am I going to serve with the main meal? How am I going to structure it all? putting all these things together and trying to figure out how do you actually structure this meal, how are we going to serve it. You may not really have it all together. The incubation stage, if you've primed your brain with the, the goals, all of the information, the skills, the challenge, where you want to go, the incubation stage happens when you stop thinking about it consciously. You might just say, all right, I got to stop thinking about this meal because I'm going to go for a run.
Yeah, because I'm stressed out about the meal perhaps, and it won't come together. Then what happens when you get more blood flow from a jog or a good night's sleep? What happens to the brain behind the scenes?
Yep, gets stronger, the resources are refreshed, you may have better activity going on. The other thing that I think that happens when you're exercising is that it forces you to live in the moment, in the present. You're not worrying about the past, you're not thinking about the future. So your brain is just kind of in this default mode of, I'm in the here and now, that's why meditation and mindfulness seem to be so relaxing, that you're just focusing on the moment.
There's some studies on daydreaming you and I have talked about, that becomes a place where those inspirational insights seem to come, whether it's walking or gardening or daydreaming or mindful meditation. That seems to be an answer in that stage of incubation that you can then leverage. If you know that you've saturated, you know you're ready to have, the final decision, then putting that into the plan that time in there might be a real asset.
I mean, actually planning an incubation stage. Yes, indeed.
Find a time to make sure that you turn off the TV, put on the right atmosphere, and that's what we found in science does really spark that inspiration.
Yeah, and we've talked in other segments about left brain, left hemisphere, right hemisphere, how the left hemisphere tends to do the fast thinking, it's got everything figured out. The right hemisphere is a little bit slower, more diffuse thinking. I think in the incubation stage, what may happen when you sort of get to the rest is you're shutting down the left hemisphere.
Because of the relaxation, or go for a walk with your dog, or play with a baby.
Yeah, because you're not thinking about, I've got to achieve this, or I should have done that. You're just where you are. It allows the right brain, the right hemisphere, which is usually dominated by the left hemisphere, gives it a chance to, experience stuff. Then when you have an idea, it can actually raise it up to your conscious awareness, and that's when you get the aha, the illumination stage. So you've gone for your run, and suddenly it all comes together, and you decide, I know how I'm going to structure this whole meal.
So we're in the illumination. Beyond it becomes implementation. What do you do there?
Right. Well, then once you've decided, you have this image of how it's got to work, you actually have to do it. You have to say, I know, we'll serve them on the porch, and we'll have this nice. So then you got to, talk to your wife and say, is this okay if we go out?
So you actually then go out and buy.
You may have to buy a tablecloth.
You may have to buy a pan. But once you decide that you're in that stage before verification, the implementation, you get to work and you try. And is there a chance to change in the verification, like tasting the soup to see?
Well, this is a good point. I mean, the real implementation is cooking the meal.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to cook the meal.
And the
it's
verification is
right.
the face on the guests and the compliments that you're going to get. Can I have the recipe, Michael?
There you go. Now, if you're really smart, you should do that process a day in advance and try the food out yourself before you try it out on.
And that makes sense. Or you make sure that once you've got the saturation of what people can and should be telling you about allergies, etc., then you cook something that you know that you can just hit a home run every time. And that's the way I think that most people do that. But it's still a creative process to say, how can I make sure that this works? So, excellent example.
Well, good.
All right. So what's the takeaway? What's the use in our real lives of the creative cycle?
Well, remember, we started with the idea that when we're looking at creativity, we want to look at creative people, creative process, creative product. This is looking at the creative process. And of the three, I think it's the area where we have most control.
Yes.
We can it's hard to change who we are.
Okay.
You know, frequently the product is subject to aesthetic tastes that
Yeah,
are beyond
yeah.
our control.
Yeah.
But what we do, you know, is more in our control in the way we go about it. So if you understand that the creative process generally has these steps, it helps in the whole planning process when you're putting together a strategic plan, if you
Sure.
will, or even just mapping out, I've got to write an essay. What are the steps that I'm going to go through? It forces you, I think, to be a little bit more mindful about what you're doing and to plan it out. And then when you know a little bit more about what cognitive abilities are needed in each stage, that can help you direct your attention in that way, or if you get stuck, to go back, you know, to
Gotcha.
an earlier stage, frequently to the, like you say, to this saturation stage where you realize, oh, I just don't have enough information to really make a good choice here, all right? Or to the manipulation stage, I haven't generated enough good ideas.
Right. And then you loop back.
Loop back and keep going. And the ultimate benefit of this from our point of view in terms of brain health is that when you engage in these activities, and basically these creative activities are, when you get into them, they're fun, they're enjoyable, they're pleasurable, which is great for your brain, but you're giving your brain this full brain workout. You're really exercising all different parts of your brain, and that's going to build up reserve. You're exercising positive plasticity, all that good stuff.
Excellent. And this isn't limited to individuals. You could have a business that has a good idea and a team. And we've worked with businesses in the past that once you have the business teammates understand the creative cycle, then they can understand that they have to move forward, but they have to go through these stages and be courageous about failure. And we've heard the term fail fast, and that's why when you're fixing your meal the night before and testing it, you can manipulate it. Thank you very much. This was an excellent
Great.
example.